groovy people, welcome to the channel. This is Blue Dragon Art, and I'm the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon. This week we are going to be doing the monthly Q&A for my patrons at the $5 level and higher. I also answer questions from readers and, commenters and stuff of that nature, but I always give preferential treatment to my patrons. So we're going to jump into that in just a moment, but I do want to mention that last week I was talking about a video that I'm working on that's been kind of months in the making. Not so much the scripting, that took several days, but I read Hirohiko Araki's book, Manga in Theory and Practice, and I wanted to do an actual in-depth discussion about that book, but that's going to be coming next week. So we'll just go ahead and jump right into the questions that I received. The first one is, why is Rowena attacking Mia when Mia doesn't know who the hell she is? They're referring to my free not safe for work webcomic, Dark Horse. The links for that are down in the description, but this is kind of spoiler territory, so if you haven't read Battle Royale yet, you might want to skip ahead in the video. But I can't talk too in depth about this without giving spoilers because it's going to be very important, especially in Seishin when I finish Dark Horse and start working on the next series. But suffice it to say, I think we all have an understanding that Odysseus, Renshaw, Rowena, and Rowan, as well as Oshin, they are all from technically present day and have traveled back in the past. That'll be explained in the comic. I'm not the best writer, but it is all going to be explained how they all got there, why they're there. Because they're from the present day and they recognize Mia, specifically Rowena, they already know a lot of events that have come to pass, and the person that Mia becomes, I've got a lot of her story arc already drafted out. I know where I want her story to end, I think, but because they know already the events of these girls' future, they know that Mia has done some pretty atrocious things. And Mia, I'm introducing her in the story at this point because, one, I wanted to demonstrate that Rina has friends besides Kana. Kana not so much, because Kana, and I really need to do a better job. I'm going to be working on a prelude, but I'm going to be doing a better job of explaining that Kana doesn't have a lot of friends because she came from another school. She came from a Catholic school, and when her older brother died, this isn't really spoilers, it's stuff that I'm going to be hinting at, but I need to do a better job of incorporating it. But after her brother died, her parents moved her to a public school. And that's where she met Rina. Again, this is my poor story writing, but, I am trying to introduce that Rina has other friends. Also, in transition, it's mentioned that Rina used to have a relationship with someone named Mia. Even back in Act 1, whenever Rina had run off and left Kana at the ice cream stand, she makes mention that she thought she'd seen Mia, but it was just some dude. So I've been kind of trying to drop some of these characters in, and Mia's going to be a very important character to the story later on, especially in relation to Rina, because as in transition I was trying to get out, I kind of stutter around, sorry y'all, but Rina and Mia had a relationship and that went south. And there are reasons why all of this kind of went south. So that's all I can really say without getting too spoilery. But suffice it to say, what Rowena is doing, I personally would not condone because Mia is not that person yet. Mia is also still underage. She is still a teenager. And regardless of how Rowena feels, it's not okay to attack someone underage who isn't doing shit. I mean, I'm not saying that you should, you know what I'm saying, right? The other thing is, Renshaw is the eldest of the three siblings. And ordinarily, if he hadn't been influenced and kind of intoxicated with this black magic, which is negative magic, that he agreed to use from Keisuma, he wouldn't be acting as erratically as he is. And then, of course, later in the chapter, Keisuma just completely takes over him, possesses him. Because he had that opening, he allowed for her to come in. But ordinarily, he's the most level-headed of the three. And then Rowan, as we see, he's way more of a pacifist. He tends to think more logically and wants to think things before acting. Whereas Rowena is more of the take action. She's more of the aggressor, and her personality is more act first, ask for forgiveness later. So that was another thing that I had in mind when I was trying to kind of set up like the differences between the siblings. And since Rowena is kind of that very passionate, take action kind of character, even though it's wrong for her to attack Mia, she knows the awful things that have happened in the future, and so she doesn't give a shit, and that's why she attacks her. But a lot of this is going to be fleshed out and made more clear later in the entire series. So again, I can't talk too much more about that because it is very much spoiler territories, but we'll leave it at that. I won't over-explain it. The next question I got is, what is the floating world? I was talking about that in the February Q&A because I was talking about a book that I read, and actually that was technically, I was just kind of offhandedly mentioning something, but I actually don't think the images that were in that particular Folk Tales of Japan book were the floating world, which, for those of you who don't know, which I probably should have explained this, the floating world is an art movement within Japan during the Edo period. It was kind of like tied into like the life of pleasure within, city life. It was a very, I'm probably not going to explain it very well, but it was very popular and kind of reflective of like city living, but it's also where you get a lot of really popular like woodblock prints that were introduced to Westerners. And so that was probably technically a misnomer on my part. I don't think those images regarding the folk tales were specifically what's called Ukyo or Ukyo-e. But yeah, that's what the floating world is. And anytime I talk about something called Floating World Comics, that, I don't know if it's a national chain, but it's a comic book and bookstore that's found in the Lloyd Center in Portland, Oregon. It's like it's a bookstore. I hope that clarifies that. I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking, and it was actually, I wasn't even really using the correct terminology for those specific artworks. They just kind of are done in like a similar style, but since they're more folktale, they probably predate the Ukyo era. But I'm not a historian, so I probably shouldn't. I shouldn't have like pulled the only art term I know out of my ass and applied it to something that it wasn't. So that's my bad, and I am sorry. But anyway, it led me to like, being able to explain what the floating world is. Because I did used to have a big book with like floating world woodcuts and paintings in them, and it was so freaking cool, but we downsized a lot, and I traded a lot of my books in for cash before we moved, since I, didn't feel like I needed them anymore. But now I kind of regret getting rid of that one. I may get another copy at some point, or just check it out from the library. What the hell? Check it out. So that answers that question. Next up, in some of my videos, I've been talking about the Psychedelica zine. ComicFury zine is going to be doing a Psychedelica Not Safe for Work zine. That's the one that's going to be coming out this summer. And then the fall zine is going to be A Walk in the Woods, which will be safe for work. But the Psychedelica zine, I'm going to be talking in more detail about that later, but the ComicFury zine is like a community project. It's a free zine to help promote indie comicers over on ComicFury, but also to kind of give readers a sample of what kind of quality comics are found over there. Because it's a community project and we're non-discriminatory, we do a first come, first served acceptance during the application period. Anyone can do it as long as their pitch is approved. And of course we have some guidelines, okay? But I'm not going to get into that here because that's not really what this channel's about. But the Psychedelica zine is going to be like, psychedelic is going to be the theme. So experimenting with mind-altering experiences, we'll put it that way. So yeah, you can look up psychedelic art. There's also a thread, maybe I'll put our thread, the hype thread, down in the description for anyone who wants to check that out to get a better idea of what specifically I'm talking about. But just to be clear, this isn't a zine that's open to like everybody on the planet. This is specifically community members. You have to be a part of the ComicFury community, either on the forum boards or hosting a comic there. We don't open it up to people who aren't part of the community because it's called ComicFury zine. But you're welcome to join the community. It's free of charge. So, yeah, go ahead and check us out. Yeah, I think that covers that one. Actually, wow, that covers all the questions that I got this time. So we'll go ahead and wrap up the video. Gonna try to keep it a little bit short this time. I don't want to like talk your ears off. But if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comment section. I do this every month. Again, the patrons at the $5 level or higher get it. Or anyone over on like Subscribestar. I usually say patrons, but like I mean my patrons who pay $5 or more. And that includes anyone over on Subscribestar. Yeah, I don't have anything more to say. I don't feel the need to drag this out and make you all sit there longer. Thank you for watching. I'll be back next week. Until then, peace and love, fare you well, and keep on trucking.